𝗵𝗵. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of the Female Factor, and I will be your host today, also moderating the first panel. And I'm accompanied here by some of our team members. You can see them mostly in white with smiling faces, so approach them if you need anything. We started the Female Factor 3 years ago, and our mission is to bring more women in leadership roles. We've been doing that through a variety of programs and trainings, such as mentoring programs and career programs, but we've been also connecting them with good job opportunities with inclusive employers. We're very passionate about that. We're not just passionate about connecting inclusive employers with talent, we're also passionate about connecting employers with each other, as I said. So we're here for really hands-on advice, best practices, failures, honest conversations, and I encourage everyone to make use of Slido online to submit your questions if we don't address them in the panels, or just here, raise your hand and shout out loud. Okay. Well, then I would say let's get started. The first panel discussion involves experts from Mondi, Kununu, and Runtastic, and we're going to talk about inclusive brand advocacy, how you can turn your own employees into your brand ambassadors, let's say. Then we have a short break, I think 10 to 15 minutes, and then our wonderful head of talent, Carol, will be moderating the second panel with experts from IKEA, LinkedIn, and Charlotte, who flew in all the way from Amsterdam today. She's a TA expert, and she's been working with WeTransfer in Mali. Okay, without further ado, there's one more guest, let's say a host, that I need to introduce today. Because we are here in Vienna at the beautiful Spaces, and it's an honor to be working with the company behind this brand, which is called IWG, and we work with them on also amplifying their employer brand. And no other than their country director, managing director in Austria has taken some minutes to welcome us here. So 𝗪𝗁𝘁, the stage is yours.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Spaces. We normally say, welcome home. Oops, we meant welcome to work. We at Spaces are very happy to host this event today and learn about the latest trends around employee branding and the needs of today's workforce. Interesting what Mathias said at the beginning. I'm going to tell you that in the last 2.5 years, we as a company, International Workplace Group, have done a lot of research and white papers to understand what has changed. The trends towards flexible working has been changing in the last 10, 15 years and has been on the rise, but the COVID-19 has been a catalyst of these changes. And 72% of employees we asked said that they would rather forego 10% salary increase than return to the old Monday to Friday routine. And 50% of those would actually resign if they were asked to come back to the office full time. 72% also said that it's going to be very important, if not one of the key factors when deciding about a new job, that a new office is close to home. So all of these changes, and what we can do to the companies to help them attract talent by providing them this inspiring workplace, as you have seen today here at Spaces, and helping these employees achieve higher productivity, better work-life balance, and be happy at workplace. By doing this, we are creating a win-win situation for both employers, employees, but also doing a huge thing for the planet, because by not commuting every day, we are contributing to the carbon footprint emission. We are very happy to be here today with you. I'm very excited to learn insights from different industries to understand basically, are we facing the same challenges and how we can answer to the needs of today's workforce. And lastly, but not the least, we are extremely happy to partner up with the Female Factor. And I think the ladies on the team are the best advocates how it feels to work in our Spaces, not only in Austria, but in other countries. Wish you all great time and very much looking forward to a very productive discussion. Thank you.
Very much, 𝗪𝗁𝘁. I can just also speak for our team. We really enjoy that they can access different locations around the world. We have a Slack channel, and I see always pictures. Oh, I'm in Paris today. Oh, I'm in Amsterdam today. So it's quite exciting. Okay, let's get started. I'm welcoming on stage now Evelyne Panzenböck, who is Employer Branding Specialist at Mondi. Yay. Then, 𝗵𝗵𝗿 Schöfl, VP of Human Relations and Organizational Development at Runtastic. Welcome, welcome. And last but not least, Mathias 𝗺𝗺, Senior Manager at kununu. So this is kind of a home run for you guys because your headquarters are all in Austria, so you were not flying in from somewhere, so it's quite comfortable. Okay, so with you, we want to talk about employee advocacy. And I mean, I think it's the most authentic way of making the employer brand speak for itself by using the voices of your team members, right? Because they know best. It builds trust. It saves costs, by the way. So I'd be curious to know, how do you encourage and incentivize your team members, your employees, to be brand advocates? Is a specific program needed, or do you motivate them in a different way?
You want to start?
Okay, I can start. So is a specific program needed? We don't have one.
Thanks for being honest, that's good.
We were thinking about it actually, and we're discussing it on a regular basis. Do we want to have like an employee advocacy program? But at the moment, we think it's not really needed because we want those people to speak openly and share their experiences on social media or wherever if they feel that they want to, and without really getting any kind of an incentive from us. So we don't have a program, but we, of course, talk to them when they have a strong voice on social media. We just chat with them about it, because it's great that they share their experiences so openly with their networks, and it's basically, as you said, the best advertisement that an employer can have.
Do you, when they advertise, so to say, for you on social media, do you provide them with materials, or do they just do that by themselves?
No, they don't really get any kind of material at the moment. What they share so openly with their networks is basically a great experience maybe that they had. Maybe it was a moment that mattered to them and they want to share it with their friends and colleagues on LinkedIn, for example. So they do it and just take a photo by themselves. They write the copy by themselves.
Wow, that's incredible, okay. So making moments matter, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
I can only agree, and I think that's the most authentic way of advertising, if they do it because they want, because they are proud. So we also don't have a formal program in place. I don't think this is the key to success. Of course, it's nice to have, and I don't say you have to scrap your program. Just saying we don't have one, and it works still. What is very important from my point of view is that you focus on a holistic employee experience, so that you think end to end. Because in the end, people will only talk positively about you as an employer if they have something positive to say. So I think it's not rocket science, to be honest.
So I can only second what Evelyne and 𝗵𝗵𝗿 just said. So it's about the intrinsic motivation you have as an employee to write something positive to your network, be it LinkedIn, be it Xing, wherever else, yeah. And it's not a corporate boast in the end, yeah. So
yeah. I mean, I can share from us at the Female Factor, because we're so brand driven as well. Like you see everywhere turquoise and all of that. And I was I'm always trying to wear according to our CI, like in terms of colors, and also our team. But we've seen that some people might not feel comfortable with sharing, especially on social media. Word of mouth is something else, because you're having conversations with friends and it's easier to talk about how you feel about your employer. But with social media, some are still not sure what they can share. Do you also have those cases where some come to you and are like, okay, I would love to raise my voice, I'm just not sure how? Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely do. That's why we do workshops from time to time to just talk about it, also bring cases and discuss it with our colleagues together. I mean, we do have also a social media policy, how how to behave on social media, or if you want to have something posted through our channel, how to do that. And that is also all managed by our social media manager and basically also monitored, but still not everyone likes to read policies. So it's important to talk about it from time to time. And we have colleagues that come to us and sometimes they just ask questions. I would love to talk about Mondi, but can I? Like, what can I do with my private profile when I'm during being an employee at Mondi? So we just talk with them about it. And we even had cases where they have seen an employee speaking about Mondi in a specific way on LinkedIn, let's say, or wherever, and they even asked us that they don't feel comfortable how that employee reacted in that situation, how should that person react, or how do we react as Mondi. But I mean, overall, everyone can do whatever they want on their social media, on their private social media profile. So there are not that many cases where they really feel that Mondi or the company should act in any way.
I mean, Mondi is a larger company. I don't know how it is with Runtastic, for example. Do you guys have any guidelines, maybe also from merging with Adidas or anything there?
I mean, we don't do workshops or anything similar. I think it's a really nice idea. We also know that, or have the situation that people approach us and say, can I really post that? And usually it's just a yes. And what we do to encourage that even further is to use our own LinkedIn page to give employees a voice. So we have regular posts where employees share their experiences, what they learned, what they enjoy about working here. So that's kind of the sneaky way in, because then they just reshare the posts. Or also we have a blog, a tech blog, and an HR blog. So I think that's also just use the channels that you have and try to make it an employee platform as well.
Let's talk about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion on employer branding. That's especially important for us at the Female Factor. I mean, we mostly focus on gender diversity, but all other dimensions are equally as important. So how can you make sure that also maybe people of underrepresented groups are included in your programs, or not programs, let's say, are included in your communication and in your employer brand at the end of the day?
From my perspective, actively include them. I mean, as easy as
Easier
that.
said than done.
Totally, but approach them, ask them what they like about working here, why they joined the company, ask them for their feedback, for their opinions, involve them in the programs, because usually people are happy to talk about why they like working here and give feedback on what they don't like. So I think just be proactive and use your employees' voices. At the same time, I think without a holistic DEI strategy and measures behind it and KPIs, you won't be able to be successful in the long run. So I think just focusing on specific and, I don't know, 1 or 2 times a year events that won't help you. So think it again, end to end, but really don't hold back and just approach your employees and ask them.
I think as easy as can be, just include them. So I can give you an example, because kununu belongs to a bigger group than 𝗺𝗺 and as well another company. And I can give you an example what they did. So they are looking specifically for one big department, a lot of employees within the next year. So what they did a workshop, and we're asking all the people what they want to read when they are going to any social media platform, and then include this kind of information, do the ads, etc. And as well show the diversity they have already in the team, also on the pictures as well. So it's not about posting stock photos, pictures, but also post your people out there. And when you look at this company now and you see all the commercial there, job advertisements, you can only see colleagues of us. And that's really, really cool, right?
Can only agree. We also do that. Use only our own employees.
So no stock photos.
No stock photos.
Thank God.
And, no, and also I think if you really look at LinkedIn posts, I really like to use LinkedIn as an example, because currently basically everyone is on there and tries out different things. And if you look at the posts that get most likes, that's not the picture perfect set. It's the authentic insights. And that might be a bit blurry, or that might be a selfie, but it's then an authentic insight, and I think that's what matters.
Because your everyday is also blurry, right?
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
Absolutely. And I think the same applies for diversity, equity, inclusion. It's not about telling the world out there that you have it figured out, you know, and we know that most companies are struggling in one way or the other, whether you're in the beginning of that journey or whether you're already advancing. It's never perfect. But I think one way to showcase that is also through reviews. And we've talked about that briefly, but especially when it comes to your D&I journey, it helps to invite as many diverse people as possible to review you as an employer, which obviously brings me now to kununu as a platform. But I've experienced some business leaders who were a bit iffy about, you know, telling their team members to write reviews because they're scared of negative reviews. What do you say to them, Mathias?
So, of course, it hurts if you get a negative review, right? Because it never feels right to get criticism, and then as well on a public platform such as kununu. But in the end, it's worthful to get any review, any feedback from your employees, and then in the first hand, don't be kind of shocked about the review when it is a bit more negative than the other one. So take it as a chance. So look at the review into detail. So inhale is my first tip.
Inhale.
Inhale. And then maybe in the second step, then talk to your people in the company, in the specific department, and then write a comment to this, and that's very interesting. So I started a few years ago. And of course there was only the review in the middle and in the focus. And now people don't want to read not anymore the reviews, but as well the comments of the employer. And that makes the culture in a company. So if you're openly transparent, that's also authenticity, what you can do as an employer out there. Not only the review you get, so if it's only 2 out of 5 stars, say you're not buying a toothbrush like on any other platform, which should work, so it's about your job. And to be honest, not every day feels, or you're not feeling every day really, really pushed and motivated, so it could be that there's critique, but then take it as a chance and comment it and work with it, yeah. Yeah.
So really engaging then
Engaging,
yeah, absolutely.
Engaging, asking for feedback as well. And if you do so, it's also a kind of appreciation, right? So because I want your feedback, because I value your opinion.
Absolutely. Do you guys have any achievements that you're proud of? Any best practices? Any things that worked well for you? And also then the other question, what did not work well for you?
Maybe if I can also add to what you just said, you can be also overwhelmed if you invite your colleagues to give a review, because so many actually then give you feedback, and it can be also very positive. So just try it out. And, we actually did it because kununu had some campaigns happening this and last year, and we just took that as a chance and asked our colleagues if they would like to rate us as an employer. And a lot of people... Was there a price
or anything involved, or what was the...
Yeah, but that was from kununu also.
Ah, okay.
So it's a top company, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess, right?
Yeah. Top company was, yeah.
Yeah, so it's, yeah.
But there was no incentive from us as an employer. It was basically from you. So yeah, and a lot of people participated, and we were happy to get a lot of positive feedback, and we also got negative feedback. That actually gave us also the chance to have a look on that and learn from that. And we discussed it also with our little team, then having also a look on the negative feedback and just check, is that something what can we change at the moment? What is something that we know about? And it's a long-term project, but it's extremely helpful. So
nice.
That was working well.
And ideally, ideally it's nothing new that you hear on kununu or Glassdoor or wherever. I mean, hopefully you have some kind of engagement survey or anything else in place, other feedback channels, people that approach you directly with your feedback. Because in the end, if you're caught by surprise, you're doing something wrong, in my opinion. So negative, constructive feedback is good, but if it surprises you, maybe take a step back and check your approach. As you were asking about failures, and we were talking about incentivizing, we have a hiring bonus. And a couple of years ago, we increased it for a specific period of time because we wanted people to refer even more of their peers, because we had, I think it was a lot of engineers that we were looking for. And actually, the referrals didn't increase. And people just told us, yes, we referred everyone whom we think they fit, and that's it. So incentivize, yes, but the idea, I think, is also to look what is it that you actually want to achieve, and it's not a matter of the amount of money, I think, but rather that they feel appreciated. And in the end, at least for our employees, it was the case that they want to bring someone to the company that is a great match.
That's very interesting, because we've heard a lot of different opinions on employee referral programs. We've also had examples from our clients, at least, where they had even a higher bonus if someone referred a female talent, let's say. It's a drastic measure, but they were really looking for women in tech, for example, in that perspective. But that's interesting that at Runtastic that did not really incentivize more people to refer everyone. Let's stick with any other failures, by the way. Or do you want to share with a glass of wine later on? Okay. Okay. But speaking about numbers and data, I mean, we are super data-driven, and nowadays you need KPIs, and you need to measure, and you need to track. We've seen that especially with, for us, for example, we track employer brand attractiveness scores for our clients, and we've seen that those who position the existing female leaders, in our case, their scores really increase tremendously if they go out in communication with the existing female leaders. Do you have similar scores in place or similar ways to measure your either advocacy program, like your employee advocacy, or your employer brand measures? What do you usually use?
I mean, I'm happy to say that we did it with you.
Oh, yes.
Not paid. No, just kidding. But it was actually, again, a very great chance to have an external provider, like the Female Factor, to have really like an external view on our website and our social media channels, on, in general, our employer brand, and just discuss it together and see where we need to improve. So that was very helpful, and I can just give it like as a recommendation to try it out and just test whatever you're doing in terms of employer branding, have someone external view it.
We did not talk about this before, okay, by the way, please.
No,
give me other measures as well, please.
Okay, other measures. We also monitor in general how our reviews are changing and our ratings on the typical platforms like kununu, Glassdoor, Comparably as well. So that's something that we also, of course, monitor and just see what changed, and then basically also take a step back and think like what happened actually this year. For example, if one review or one rating got worse, why could that be? So it also gives you the opportunity to just see, are we going into the right direction, or do we need to maybe do something else and more?
Mm-hmm. 𝗶𝗵𝗿, what measures?
Thinking about what I can add.
I know you do a lot of internal service as well, right?
Yeah. So apart from checking the ratings, the external ratings, and also before starting any kind of employer branding project or whatever project it is, set your goals and then measure accordingly, obviously. But when it comes to the internal side of employer branding, what I think is very important to look at, in our case, the employee engagement survey, and see, does that match? What kind of feedback do we get? Also, we have diversity, equity, and inclusion within our company goals. So that's something that or especially I'm very proud of, because I think it's important that you measure and that you also define a strategy and act on it. So again, look inside and listen to the feedback, and then also act on it. What I hear a lot is that people ask for feedback once or twice a year, but they don't do anything with it. And then, of course, people get frustrated. So share the results transparently, but also what you then will do with it, set action items.
Absolutely. Who is held accountable for that in your departments?
I mean, for us, it's really the management team as a whole.
Good.
And we in HR are kind of the supporters. Yeah.
Nice.
So I can only add that we, as a new work group, we have weekly meetings with the whole companies, the whole 𝗺𝗺𝗿𝗂𝗁, where we not only can write a review on kununu, that's obvious, so we are allowed to, but as well there are internal questionnaires we are able to fill in, and you can upvote them, and our board, our executive board, is answering those feedbacks, and that's really cool. So we have that on a weekly basis every Friday at noon, and it's a top management topic there. Yeah.
Nice. We also have time to take questions from the audience, both our wonderful guests here, but also online on Slido. So I'm gonna look at the tablet real quick. It's my little helping hand. But in the meantime, if you have any questions for our panelists, if anything is interesting, if any other details would be interesting for you, please raise your hand. We can hear you. Yes, please.
I have a question regarding your content on LinkedIn. So what are like typical stories or topics you think creating much more likes, as you mentioned? Is there anything you learned where you say, okay, these kind of stories are more interesting for the audience?
So I'm just repeating the question so also our online audience can hear it. It's Alex from Bike Map, right? Hi. So you asked what type of content performs best on diverse platforms, right?
Maybe which is not so performing well.
Or also what is not performing well, because we wanna be honest here.
What works for us is if we really give employees a voice. So if we have not only quotes from employees in the post, but also a picture or a story or any kind of success that they share. Maybe they were at a conference and learned something new. Maybe they have their work anniversary, things like that. So really things out of the daily work life. What doesn't work so well, I think, is the more generic posts. So the more specific you are, at least for us, and the more examples you provide, the more you really engage your employees in the creation of the post as well, the better it works for us.
Thank you very much.
Same for us. Also, employee stories, employee highlights work very well. And also kind of employee events that are happening, like running events, where people really feel connected to that. So they also enjoy those posts. What sometimes does not work so well is too much branding in the asset that you use, because I think that somehow loses a bit of the authenticity. And sometimes I feel like the LinkedIn algorithm is against us. You really need to monitor when is a good time to post specific content. So I'm happy that we have a team that helps us doing that at Mondi.
I think it's not about the biggest budget you can spend on very high-class pictures and videos, etc. But it's maybe only a picture from an event you're joining, or there's a sales event, people from the sales teams are there, and you're making a picture from them and then posting it. And I think that's, for us, very successful.
We've also seen selfies perform really well. I don't know why. But yeah. By the way, if you have any feedback for LinkedIn, Thoman is here. He'll be on the next panel. Yeah, I'm sure you can chat. I'm taking a question in between from our online audience. Dominic is asking, how do you really handle bad brand advocacy?
Talk to the people. So, I mean, it depends whether it's anonymous or not. What we do with, or did in the past with bad kununu ratings, for example, is to also encourage the person to reach out to us. Because in the end, sometimes the feedback then is rather superficial. And most of the time, you need more context to understand it better. So what we do, if it's anonymous, encourage the person to reach out. And then have a conversation to understand better where this is coming from and what the underlying problem is.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically open the door, like let him in or her in, and give it a chance to tell or to talk to you in the end. And not because what I mentioned before, it's not about the review, so we're talking now about the negative review on kununu, for example, but it's also about what you're making out of it is, yeah. And commenting it is a very good first step then.
Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe also as a context, we as the Female Factor also look at kununu ratings, for example, because we only have employers on our job platform who go through a certain vetting procedure, we call it. So they need to have a certain D&I score, and reviews on kununu also play into that. A lot of reviews often also involve management, also involve leaders. And in the worst cases, we've seen even discrimination cases and reviews on that. Have you had a case where there was consequences for a leader, for management, where you had those negative reviews, or was that not the case for your companies?
At least I don't know about a case, but
luckily not. Of course, we in the management team, we often get negative feedback because I think, or at least from my point of view, when you work in HR or when you're part of the management team, that's your daily business. That's fine. What is important is that you then talk about it and that it's constructive. We luckily didn't have a case where we had to take consequences, but what we always do is follow up.
Nice.
We also have a management Q&A once a month since a couple of years. And that also really paid off because people, they want to ask their questions, they want to hear the answers. And I think, listening is really important.
So if you experience such discrimination on kununu, there are rules of engagement, what you are allowed to write on kununu as a job seeker or employee. Yeah. So if something like this happens, please always reach out to us so we can handle that properly.
Okay. We have another question coming in from the audience dialing online. Do you have any policies in place in case an employee posts something against the company culture or standards?
Don't. So far, we didn't need it, to be honest. I don't know about you.
no. Like just mentioned, our social media policy, which we do have, but there is no procedure what would happen if someone would say something very bad about Mondi. Just like we discussed already, approach that person and just talk with that person, maybe on a one-on-one, to understand where does that come from.
Okay. I hope also your team members are dialing in. That's interesting to know. Freedom of speech. Do you know or track how many of your applicants are coming through employee advocacy? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you share any learnings there?
Not really. I mean, we ask when people apply, they fill out the typical form, and they also fill out a question regarding how they learned about the job. And there is the option to select a referral, or I learned from a friend. This is how we do it, pretty basic, but I think it does the trick.
The same for us. It's also part of our application form. So you just need to choose how did you get to know about us, and that's where we track basically where the people are coming from.
Do you have any numbers in mind in terms of percentages compared to who's coming through an employee and who's coming basically through an external platform?
No, I don't have that number right now in my head, but our employee referral program is basically rolled out in a number of locations. So if I would tell you a number, it would be also just for Vienna, so that might not say much.
Got it. I'll follow up on that afterwards in an email.
I mean, for us, referrals has always been one of the top 3 channels. I also can't tell by heart what the exact percentage is, but I think it's not to be underestimated channel, so yeah.
Nice. Okay, any other questions? Yes, Toman.
Would you agree that it's even an advantage having negative reviews because it makes the positive ones more credible? Because I imagine a hotel having just 5-star ratings and I won't believe it because it's not real.
Okay.
Do you agree or not?
So Toman from LinkedIn asked, is it even good to only have positive reviews? Because if he reads from a hotel that there's only like 5 stars everywhere, he might not even believe it because it's too shiny.
I think it's more authentic, right? If you're not only having, so we as kununu don't have only 5 out of 5 stars, right? So it's more authentic if you share also your weaknesses out there. And so that's what I can tell. So it's more trustworthy if there's also negative feedback on kununu and then seeing the company reacting to this negative feedback as well.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, go on.
In the end, you want to hear the feedback, hopefully. So I think it's good if people share their constructive feedback. As we talked before, hopefully it is phrased constructively. But I agree, I'd become suspicious as well if there are only 5-star ratings. But then, from my perspective, you also have to look at the number of reviews, because if it's only, I think, I don't know, 5 or so for a 500 employee company, then you have to set it into perspective.
Absolutely. We have another question here.
Follow up on Tovan's question, actually. So TripAdvisor, were able to post, and even if you weren't staying in the hotel, you were able to post a review. But then a lot of other companies or platforms changed that model to say, no, you actually have to have booked it with us, so like Booking.com, you know, no, they have actually booked it and then you're allowed to review. Now with kununu, do actually the reviews get vetted in terms of, have they actually worked there? Because what we've just had was, suddenly Amazon and Apple suddenly had a third of employees because all of them have been employees on LinkedIn, and suddenly LinkedIn actually researched and did a bit of cleaning. So do you do that, or do you vet the reviews? Because we just talked about negative reviews, and quite obviously you can bias at positive and negative reviews these days.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
In social media is a big topic about YouTube, about Twitter, about all these followers. So how do you get that vetted?
Yeah, so
I'm going to repeat this question for the online audience. It was a long one, but basically, to sum it up correctly, hopefully, is when you compare, for example, TripAdvisor and Booking.com, you brought the example of being able to review only if you booked a hotel, actually, or something else through that platform. Are you also vetting that as kununu in that case? Do I need to showcase that I was an employee or I am an employee when I write something?
So first of all, I want to dig down on the topic of companies who are out there and where you can buy positive reviews. So we are really going against them. So because we are not, I mean, that's not the goal with kununu, right? That you only have positive or as well negative reviews. And then we have a verification process at kununu when you're filling out the review form and leaving the review on kununu. So it has to be a valid email address. So that's an easy one because it must not be a company email address, to be honest. But then we are checking the reviews as well with an automatic filter if it's maybe is the one, the other, like what was posted 2 days or 3 days ago, so that we only have one review from one person, right? And then if there is kind of, you're not believing that this person is working for your company or was applying for your company, so we have the email address of this person. It still is anonymous, so we don't give you the email address, of course, so that's a very important one. But we can reach out to this person and ask the person, could you please tell us if you were applying for this company or working for this company, and please send us something which proves that. If we don't get the proof here, this review gets offline then.
Nice. Thanks for clarifying.
Sure.
We have a couple more questions from the online audience, if no one else is here raising their hand. Okay, then I'm going to take these. One is for you, 𝗶𝗍. You mentioned that Runtastic as a company has set D&I goals. What kind of D&I KPIs are we talking about? Do you have some examples?
So we actually came up with our own metric called desired state of inclusion, and it's partly sense of belonging that we measure with our engagement survey, and partly ratios. So we took 2 diversity dimensions, female-male and international-national. And this is what we're tracking. If you have any detailed question, Moni is also here from our team. She's our DEI expert in yellow back there. So please feel free to approach her later on as well.
Perfectly. We will network with Moni then. Thank you for sharing. Then another question in terms of referred candidates. We talked about it briefly before. Do they get any preferred treatment, like a fast track, when they apply through being referred by an employee?
We don't do a fast track. I don't know what it is about you. Of course, we check, okay, who is the person that referred that person? Is it really a referral? So also here, we check.
Okay.
And yeah, because some people, they select, I heard from a friend, because the friend saw the job ad.
Okay, understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, same for us. So basically, we see that person in our system as a referred candidate, but then there is the usual recruitment process that is taking place.
Okay. Then we have another question coming in terms of D&I KPIs. What kind of consequences are taken if they're not achieved? Any influence on monetary bonus payments of executives?
We have our company goals as part of our bonus systems for the management team, yes. So in the end, it has an influence. what is even more important is that you act on it and that you do something with it and that you figure out why didn't we reach the goals. Because it's fine, usually you aim high, or at least from my point of view, you should aim high. And it's okay not to reach the goal in the first place, but then to check, okay, what is still missing, where are the gaps, and how can we close them?
But they are being taken responsible for that, so that's great. We've also worked with companies where D&I was one type of goal you could set for managers in terms of the bonus, let's say, where it has an influence, but you could also go for another topic such as sustainability. So they had, I think, 3 different goals, and so I think there are different ways to integrate it. Okay, there's a lot of questions coming in. Gotta organize here. How can a male-dominated company or sector show that they are willing to be inclusive? How can they approach the topic?
I believe that also what they partly do with our team is to also be a spokesperson for example, female empowerment. Female empowerment does not has to be driven by females only, but then also have a male management person speak up and just position our goals and position how important that is to be a diverse workforce.
100%. I can maybe share from our experience at the Female Factor as well that just say it out loud, even if it's internally, but also externally. Please speak about it, no matter how you identify. I think it's really, really important that we understand that the topic of gender diversity is not just for women, it's for all of us. Okay, another question came in, and maybe that person missed it, but do you have any goals in place when it comes to employee advocacy? Also for the future, as the fight for talents is getting harder.
I mean, obviously, we want to drive it more and have more people talking about their experience while working at Mondi. As mentioned, we don't have a real advocacy program in place right now, but we are currently discussing how can we make the process of speaking about working at Mondi easier. So we are currently looking at how we can, on a regular basis, suggest them, for example, top picks from last week. If you want to share it, feel free, and then maybe add already kind of a copy that they could use if they want to, but of course they don't have to. So just simplify the process and make it easier for them by basically making it just a one-click activity.
One-click activity, okay. 𝗶𝗵𝗿, Mathias, any goals in place?
As mentioned, we also don't have a formal program in place, so no goals for that. What we do is, on the one hand, the DSI that is very important. We have the employee engagement survey where we have the quarterly insights and where we also set quarterly goals on what we want to improve on. And as mentioned before, for me, it's really important to also focus on the internal topics and not only on the external ones. That's why I'm repeating that.
So it's basically one of our main drivers should be and is within the next year that our campaigns are running with the people we are looking for. And this is really where the focus in employer branding from the group is going into.
Okay. We still have a couple minutes for a last round of questions from the audience. Remarks. Any learnings you want to share? No? Okay. Yes, Charlotte.
What would you like to do next?
The question, online audience, is what would you like to do next?
You want to start, or shall I?
You can go. Okay.
When it comes to DEI, it's increase the diversity dimensions that we are tracking and looking at. I mean, that's a journey. But for me, it's really important that we take the full accountability and not just stop at 2 diversity dimensions, but also make sure that we really follow up with that. We currently, to be honest, don't have plans to introduce a formal employee advocacy program. I mean, maybe we learned something more today so that we are convinced to also introduce it at Runtastic, but currently we're really focused on making the internal brand very strong so that people feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, and I can only tell very short term. So I'm here with colleagues of mine, and we will probably take a selfie, and my colleague is posing it then.
We're also going to take a selfie. It's fine.
Two bigger topics or employee lifecycle moments that we are currently looking at is the offboarding experience. So basically, how do we say goodbye to our employees? Never mind the reason why they're leaving. So we want to have a global standard here and just make the employee experience and then also alumni experience at Mondi as positive as possible. Obviously, it's not going to be only positive always, but here and there are things that also we can drive and make better from an employer point of view. And the other very big topic is to listen to our employees more often. So back in the days, before Corona, it was just the usual standard to ask for their feedback maybe every 2-3 years. And that's just not how it should be anymore, because the world around us is changing constantly. Also, we are used to give feedback often, so we want to implement a kind of a employee listening tool that we would like to use and just ask for their feedback and how they feel working at Mondi, or maybe also on certain topics, certain situations that are happening more often and easier.
Nice, I love that employee listening tool. Okay, wow, great.
There's a copyright on that name, okay?
Oh, okay. Sorry, there's just one last question coming in online, so I gotta take this one. Evelyne, this is following up on what you just said. Since you mentioned offboarding, how do you ensure that the employer brand is positive throughout the whole hiring touch points and also offboarding? Never burn bridges.
I mean, we are working on that at the moment. So we have a little project team, a global project team, where we discuss that. But there are a lot of things that can be driven from the employer point of view. And one thing is that if someone wants to resign or leave the job, don't take it personally. We tend to do that because we can, maybe that's feedback to us because I was a bad manager and now the person is leaving. But that's not always the case. So be open, don't take it personal from the team lead or manager point of view, because then I think the journey of saying goodbye to the colleague can be more neutral and therefore more positive than negative.
Nice. Thank you for
maybe
sharing.
I can add something because we have an offboarding process that I think is very well set up. On the one hand, everyone who leaves the company fills out the survey so that we have the data, but at the same time, they have a talk with us in HR. And then we have a management team goodbye, where we in the management team take the time to talk to the person, to listen to their feedback again, but also to thank them for their efforts. And I think this really pays off if you invest the time also for a proper offboarding process, not only the onboarding. So I think many companies underestimate that actually.
And if I can actually add to that, is that it gives you also as an employer a huge benefit, because if you stay nice also in the offboarding process, and if you also have the employer brand consistent throughout this process, you basically leave the door open for that person to come back maybe one day.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. 100% agree. Okay, I think time is up for our panel. Thank you so much for being with us here. I think you're all staying a bit longer as well. Great. It was really a pleasure. Thank you for sharing so honestly. And Evelyne, also thank you for being our brand ambassador a bit. So you already took away the message that I wanted to say now, which is please approach our team if you want to work on your employer branding together with us at the Female Factor, if you want to measure things that maybe we can do as a community with our talent pool and all the access that we have. You can reach out to Lisa, me, or Dorian, and you can also reach out to our team online. I think Tanya is online in the chat, so feel free to engage with us. And now for everyone here in Vienna with us, please have a glass of wine, a snack. We will be back after a short break with wonderful Carol and the second panel. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ready? Okay, fabulous. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for hanging around. For those of you in the back, please feel free to continue enjoying your beverages and snacks, but if you can, please do it quietly as we are about to begin our next panel discussion. So thank you once again. My name is Carol. I'm the head of talent here at the Female Factor. I'm excited to be facilitating or moderating our next panel, where, as you can see, we are all ready to get started. Just want to say that I am joined on stage today with Charlotte from Think Talent, Annette from IKEA, and Tolman from LinkedIn, who's already been called out a few times in the first panel, so we're going to be charging him with quite a few questions as we're here. So thank you all for joining us today. We've had some lively discussions in preparation for today's conversation, and we have a very large topic to cover, of course, so we're just going to dive right in. It was important to our panel as well in our previous talks just to kind of draw out the elephant in the room. We are obviously working very closely at the Female Factor to increase the gender diversity in leadership positions with more female leaders. And so we're doing our best job to make sure that we are gender diverse, but we have to recognize that as far as other diversity elements are concerned, we are a group of white people talking about diversity. So we want to call that out, because one of the first questions we want to address when it comes to building a talent pool, or a talent community, if you will, what happens when you don't have the diversity in the group in order to increase diversity from the outside? Who would like to start?
Yeah, I can go first. So I think super important for me is to your point, exactly what we've done now is sort of address the elephant in the room, recognize that, you know, there's a lot of work to be done, and a group of maybe the four of us have other diverse factors that we can't, see physically. I'm sure that is definitely the case, but I think for now it's about getting input. So one of the things that we did in my last organisation is we went through this discussion. Right, it's a finance fintech company, predominantly white male. So for us, it was about, okay, well, where can we get external expertise to come in and really talk to us about this? We want to, a great talk from the panel before about advocacy. We want to leverage the diversity of our employee group, which is a lot more diverse than the management team that was in place. But how do we do that, and how do we build confidence in doing that, and actually engaging with people who are specialists that want to share their voice across the company and invite their, our MT. It was mandatory for them to be involved in these discussions and to actually lead the way in terms of recognising, there's this, I can't remember what the wheel's called, the wheel of privilege, where they sit on the wheel of privilege, and how do we invite other people to talk about that in an open and safe space? Because then they really, you have to make it human, right? You can't just talk about diversity as a statistic. Good word for me to pick when I'm speaking. You have to make it real, and you have to make it come to life, and it has to sort of, when you're an MT member, it sort of has to hit you between the eyes a little bit sometimes. I think that's super important, because then it really hits home. So that's sort of first thoughts from me.
Yeah.
I can add to that. We have, it's a key priority, diversity and inclusion within employer branding and recruiting. And she's not here today, but 𝗺𝗺 is our diversity and inclusion leader, and it's a close collaboration between us. It's not that she is the networking person and she get in touch with all these networks and all these diverse groups, and then she brings something up. And then people like me, we have to bring it down. but this is really good. But then we can, so we had, she get in touch with a refugee organization. They are mainly taking care of people from Ukraine who will need some work in Austria. And she was like bringing this up. And then we had last week, the Austrian Integration Fund was from the ministry was visiting us, and IKEA had the pleasure to welcome them, our unit in 𝗺𝗺℗. And yeah, it was such a huge thing to create a talent pool out of this, and to invite the people, giving them behind the scenes look. That was doing our store management, so really proud of them.
Yeah.
Preparation time of 1 week, and the second
tight
part,
time frame.
the second part was like giving them an introduction into our employer brand. It was me. So like, IKEA, like, it was a small company. It was like a startup. It was founded by a 70-year-old male. And the third, but I think most important, was meeting our recruiting team. And
Yeah.
at this time, it was only male.
Yeah.
But it was, the team is diverse when I look from this
Has
perspective.
changed.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this was the most important thing, to get in touch with them, give them the audience, give them the room for questions,
Yeah.
and take care of them. Yeah.
Definitely.
I would take a more general approach. And when we talk about branding, then there's this misconception of beginning on the image outside instead of asking yourself, your organization, so what's the status quo? And this might be an ugly discussion, because the status quo might be, okay, we are just white male, cis persons, all Caucasian, and now there's this diversity topic coming up, and we have no clue at all, because it was never a topic, we're not the experts, we don't have it yet. But that's, I guess, the first step. Because if you do it the other way around, then it's shiny marketing, and then people come inside your organization, and they will reckon, okay, nothing is true here, and most likely they will get the first impression of that being a fake outside world when they are inside first time having an interview or anything like that, or they know someone and ask. So taking this maybe even brutal step first to set down and say, well, so what's the status quo? Where are we and where do we want to be? That's what you need to do. And after that, you can define steps. And this process even is something you can start with communicating to the outside world, because it makes you more, approachable, and even it's from my point of view, there's sympathy in it if you say, well, we are aware now and we want to change, and that's what we are doing, because no one's perfect, no one's at the finish at the beginning.
Right.
But currently, it's what I perceive somehow that organizations they kind of fear the communication of the process. They want to communicate the perfect result. And as they are not there yet, most likely nothing is, or very few things are communicated.
And it may not always be the exact thing that's happening. It might not always be the authentic
perfect
picture.
world.
Right. And as the last panel addressed as well, it's all about presenting yourself authentically in a way to brand. And this is most important, as we've discussed, of course, in building a talent pool. If you're not representing your brand authentically and you are trying to attract and retain certain talent, how is this going to work? Where do the two come together? So what would be, what are some of the benefits of having a strategy in place? What would you say are some of the things that are important in identifying that perfect talent pool for you and your organization? What are the benefits of that?
I can go. I think the most important thing is to not try to do everything at once, because you'll get nothing done. I typically work in startups and scale-ups, so small organizational groups with less budget probably than some of the bigger the bigger people that we contend with in the market. So you have to really pick what's important to you. Don't try and do 100%, because it's just not going to work, and you're going to burn yourself out trying to achieve everything. So, work really closely with the business. Again, this is not us in a little bubble of HR people saying this is important. It's, there's programs showing diversity really matters and has a direct financial impact on the performance of the business. So what does the business need? What are your critical roles that you need to fill over the next 1, 2, 3 years? What are the high volume roles you need to fill over the next 1, 2, 3 years? And maybe focus there first. Don't try and focus on every role that you have, because it's going to be an impossible task. So focus on those and deep dive. Where can we get good resource centers from? Where can you utilize your employee groups? Again, we're just typically, I'm sure hands in the air, everybody says, could you do with more people in your HR team? And is your HR budget big enough? Everybody's, so you've got 100, 200, 10,000 people there to advocate for you and help you and help open doors for you. So don't also expect that it all sits with you. Ask for inspiration from the people that work at your business. Be open, be honest, and say, this is what we're aiming to do. This is where we want to focus to start with. It doesn't mean it's the end of the journey, but this is where we want to start. How can you help us? What ideas do you have? This is what we're thinking. Come to us and let's have a proper discussion about how we can move things forward.
Well, and to your point, it's like you said, obviously one of the main benefits that comes out of doing that and making those steps is there is true statistics that have
It's going to be the word of the day.
It's going to be the word of the day, right? Our panel's going to struggle with this word now. That show evidence that obviously putting in the effort, the time, and building that strategy will have a return. It will have a return. Annette, Tommen, any thoughts on that as well?
Do you want to go first, or?
You are more strategic. Can I give the example?
I should go first.
Yes.
No, well, so if we are talking, now we're at invest, now, and the return, and now it's like this money discussion. And if we're talking about invest, it always sounds like a huge amount of money. So you need this huge marketing budget, and you will have to stuff it in LinkedIn or somewhere else, and then whatever happens. But it's different. So talking about, okay, what do you want to put outside? So, okay, there's the company vision. So if I ask you, how is it to work for the female factor, and there's no camera on, you will not cite it, you will not read down the 5 major key points, you will tell me what's your job.
Sure.
So now I ask someone in a similar role, the same question, it will be slightly different. So I'm in sales working for LinkedIn, so my message being a sales is quite different than my colleague doing his sales job. Why? Because I'm human, I'm an individual. So by making people like ready to and enabling them to speak up, to tell their story, you have like the same story but taught and brought to people in different authentic voices. So that's where diversity begins. So what's my diversity? I'm a student guy living in Munich, not so fancy, I know. But living my role as a sales is quite different than like the typical sales guy, I would say. So by simply allowing and engaging and trying people to be able to do that, you will have more voices of the same story in different nuances, which makes it more credible, more interesting, more reliable.
Yeah.
So that's what.
And there's
what I would
benefit
say.
to that.
And it's zero cost at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's enabling people to tell their story, not do fancy pictures in highly paid marketing campaigns.
One of the first things that you mentioned when we initially talked, which I found really important, was it's not just about the message, but the messenger, and who is putting the message out there. And again, if you're trying to attract and retain talent, diverse talent, it's important that not only that message is certainly addressing certain things, but then, of course, who is presenting the message. So this is also something that's really critical to keep in mind, I think, as well, when talking about building a pool. Okay, so let me ask you this. Based on the changes in business, everyone has seen the changes in the workforce over the last couple of years. Do we have the right people in place as recruiters? What do we think about that?
I love our recruiting team. We have one. I don't want to showcase her, but she's part of the people community of having a disability. And in her case, you can see it, but yeah, it gave us, we can learn a lot of her. And this is good to have her on board. And it was, because you were asking if we had some focus areas, and this was one. And it started with a real gap. So we analyzed that as many companies, we don't have enough people with disabilities within our workforce. We pay for that. And to be brutal honest, this is how it is, and we want to close that gap. And but even it's all about diversity. And when you start including these people with disabilities, this community, it's a very broad topic. Yes, most of the things you can't see, they're not so simple. And yeah. And we have, to add something, we have strategies in place. But I want to talk about them.
This is important.
No, I think we have a really strong team of recruiters, and I don't sit in like an ivory tower because I'm working close to them, and they tell me what they need. So it's not that me, and so they say we need something like that, and we are talking to the people, and this must be now a recruiting campaign, and
And so then from your perspective in the brand awareness scenario, then you're doing what you can on your part to help them meet their goals in recruiting more diverse talent.
Of course, for me, they are like the employing brand ambassadors. It's them, because they meet the people. They are the first ones, and you can see what huge impression they sometimes have. They're very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Charlotte, did you have?
Yeah, I echo that. I think the critical thing here is the role of the recruiter has changed a lot. So when I first, I won't say how old I am, but when I first joined, it was, calling people, chatting to them. Again, the war for talent is a completely different debate. I could talk about for hours, and how real, is it real, is it not real? But the role of the recruiter has absolutely changed. For recruiters in the room, I'm sure you've felt the same if you've been in the industry for a couple of years. You're really starting to tell stories now. Your role is so blended in with marketing and brand, because actually, one of the things I've also found, especially again, my slant is very much startup scale up. your employer brand tends to lead first before your actual brand gets up and running, if you do it well and if you execute it well. Because typically in startups, they are typically less constrained about the way they communicate and how they communicate and the platforms that they can use. So actually they get out quicker and great stories get out further because there's probably more freedom and less constraints on what you can and can't say. And I see even in my own teams is even now when I'm working with companies at different stages, is the pressure on the marketing team from the TA team to say, what can you do? Can you help us? We need to do this. And actually, we now in TA need to start thinking, actually, we need to potentially look at restructuring ourselves because we can't expect marketing to do everything. Some companies, they run everything and own everything. But actually, a lot of times, I have the marketing leads coming to me to say, hey, like, you ask us for more things than anybody else, actually, and we recognize your problem is as big as bringing in, the revenue from a sales team. How can we work together on what do you need? How can we teach you and how can you teach us how to really bridge this gap? Because that's where it's at. The group that spoke earlier and even talent communities. I remember back in the day when it was like a little list of emails, which you can't do anymore, of course, because of GDPR. So actually, it's about engaging with a community.
Yeah.
And you do that by making your brand authentic, but also irresistible. You show the highs and the lows because that's an authentic EVP. But that's a huge part of the business. And I worked at great companies where they said I joined because of the employer brand, and that for me was like, oh my god, we've done it. Like we're not perfect, but that was such an amazing win for me. It's like, oh my god, all this effort, and is that the right post? Is that not the right post? Are we doing the right thing? Does it look like we're just having fun all day? And how do you change the narrative? And that's where marketing can become really powerful as a business partner to TA, as opposed to just back in the day when we'd recruit for marketing and be their business partner. It's a much more hybrid role, I think, now than it ever has been before.
Much more collaborative.
Yes.
Has to be.
Yeah.
I think I want to do something which is not that common on panels. I want to disagree a bit. Because you've asked, are like the recruiters in the right role or the right ones?
Do we have the right ones recruiting?
I think we agree that the role changed dramatically.
Definitely.
I would say that what the company asks from them is just unfair. Because if you take a look back just a few years, what the role was a selection role. So you got all these fancy and good applications and you selected the best and interviewed them, and then you've been the very critical person in the room, and then you had this interview set up. I did it a lot, like as an applicant, like on the ugly on the other side on the table, like the sweaty part.
On the other side.
Yeah. So now this is not how it works, like. And so what is happening? So the hiring managers, so-called, like someone in the group says, well, this is urgent. Here's a PDF. You're lucky. And it's 10 years old. We've never changed the formulation. It's horrible to read. Do your best. So then this person has 113 LinkedIn contacts in HR and marketing and using an SAP expert in something.
Sure.
So what's happening now? The PDF is shared.
Yeah.
And no magic is happening, right? Because it's not how it works like. So the whole process is set up that the market, the whole universe changed dramatically. The setup did not.
Yeah.
So how should it work? It can't. And the other parts of the company, people who are highly engaged and linked and networked to the specific groups are not engaged at all. They say, well, I don't share anything. It's not, am I recruiting? No, I'm an IT, I'm a sales, I'm whatever. So
they're not
I would frame the question different. Are the people in the right role? I guess so. Is the process still up to date? Not at all.
Good point. That's a really good point. I mean, obviously, even if we look at just over what the pandemic has affected as far as recruiting is concerned, it has opened up a wider net that people can go out and increase their talent pool as long as they're opening up these flexible working options. But this obviously then, like you said, yes, changes the system, changes the process, and changes the actual way that a recruiter does his or her job.
We are right now changing the process because of this.
Okay.
But I strongly believe that we had worked together with the recruiting team and now adding a sourcing element because we know there are not enough applications. Like, I think on the market, you just have to listen to the TV, radio, it's everywhere. And there I see a lot of this working together. So in IKEA, it's in one stream, employer branding, recruiting and sourcing. And this makes totally sense because you don't know where to start. But for me, it's adding another source, but really working together.
We also talked about the fact that building your talent pool starts internally, right? Because your talent pool is already inside the organization. That is your talent pool. With regards to that, how do you address situations if your talent pool is not very diverse or perhaps is pushing against trying to take on diversity and inclusion in the organization? How do we address that so that we can get better about pulling in a more diverse talent pool from the outside?
Well, I'm not a recruiter myself, but I would say and argue to start using facts. And the facts are, being it in Austria or internationally, that the talent pool you're looking for is getting smaller, not in every country, but if you take Austria, for example, shrinking working population, so pressures on the market. So if you now are not in Vienna, but somewhere in Tyrol or in Styrian countryside where I'm from, so talent pool gets massively smaller. And if you now stick to, well, perfect person is native Styrian, because I don't want to speak High German, so there's almost no talent pool left. So if you bring on the facts and take statistics from, you know, the public agency, take a glance into LinkedIn, whatever you want to put as a referral, you will see that something has to change. And then if you don't open up, there's simply no one left to be potentially working for you. Sure. So then you get rid of this discussion about it worked before, because it did, but it does not. And I think that's like something which is a fact. And if that's accepted, it gets to, I think, the internal changes where I'm not an expert at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw it in 𝗹𝗲𝗿𝗃, where the recruitment running there for a logistic unit, and 𝗹𝗲𝗿𝗃 is like the horror place in Austria. You can't get people. Yeah, it's
I've
really.
been there, it's not
That's it?
But they have an employment rate.
Is all that's there is IKEA? Is that,
No,
is that the
it's
case?
a center of logistic companies, and you have an employment rate that is below everything. And they asked us to recruit a whole team, and said, yeah, within a short time period, and said, yeah, no problem. And we had there this unit manager who he was giving the diversity goals. He wanted to include women, refugee background, people with disabilities. And it was him convincing his team. And then it was such a great collaboration that we could manage that in this short time period. And it's not that all the people said in this unit, oh, it's fine, we will manage. Yeah, it is in the beginning more work. You have to think about if a people doesn't hear how to deal with that. But if it's a group, then it's much easier. You have to think about that people need a transport to this unit because they don't have cars. Yeah? As you have to do something, you have to move. Yeah. But if you move, then it's like, and we managed to find, I think it was 40 people within 2 months. Or so.
That's awesome. That's great, yeah. Well, and we said, you know, again, in the earlier panel, I think someone said it's not rocket science, right? There are some things that we realized. I want to get to a point where we had talked earlier as well, you know, ways to attract a diverse group of talent, right? As we know, flexibility is a big thing, but one of the things we talked about is who defines flexibility? You don't have to say the name of the company, but can you just please reference what you saw in an advertisement recently?
It was not an advertisement, a real-life experience.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm living in a new-built area in the western part of Munich, and there's a lot of families living there. So I have 2 kids. A lot of my spare time is on playgrounds being dirty, covered in sand. And there was another father, and we were talking about how flexible life is now, because I'm working for LinkedIn. It can't be more flexible. Can do whatever I want as long as I do my job somehow. And he was smiling, saying, "Well, yeah, we do have this kind of flexibility now too." And he smirked and smiled and said, "Okay, what are you doing, guys?" And it's a very big, well-known company out of Munich. I won't go into more
Won't say
details.
who. Nope, that's fine.
And he said, well, yeah, it's defined as that. It's like full flexibility being 80% of time in the office. So that's how they framed it, which means you have 1 home office a day, but they framed it like it's so super flexible. And they were kind of proud of it. And he was like, everybody was making jokes of it. So it was a nightmare, even internally. So now try to communicate that externally. Fully flexible, having 1 day.
1 day working.
Like in an office job. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah.
So in this, it was high time Corona. It was like lockdown, close to lockdowns.
Wow.
So
So one of
they
the things is,
perceived it as more flexible than before. I guess that's true.
sure.
But still, you know.
Not quite flexible. And that's just it. Who defines the standard? And as organizations, how do we define what we need to put out there, not only to attract the talent, but also then to retain the talent we've already attracted? What are we doing, and how are we setting that up? Charlotte, any thoughts there? I know you had shared some things before too.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds counterintuitive, right? How do you attract a diverse workforce if you don't, provide a diverse way of working?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a bit of a no-brainer, but actually when it gets to it, now that Corona's quieting down, I'm sure there's lots of people in the room that are like, yeah, the management team are starting to talk about that whole thing about coming back all the time again.
Yep.
You have to address it, and it's about nipping it in the bud and, addressing what does that actually impact. So if you want to increase your gender diversity, typically, single parents typically tend to be mothers that typically have to do school runs. A 9 to 5, bum in seat, can't move from that desk in the office, doesn't actually work when you're trying to raise children on your own. So, how are we going to meet diversity scores? If you really are passionate about fixing it, how are we actually going to address that? Because these, to your point, facts and figures, these are facts and figures of the reality of the case, and that's how it impacts
But now comes feelings, because you mentioned now the example of being, a 9 to 5 part-time mom. 9 to 5 part-time, sorry. 9 to whatever part-time mom. And that's where I always, because I'm a dad, I work, but I try my best to have a lot of time. So whenever I see those, we're flexible, we're doing something for families, for example, it's women 100% of time. So it's like I'm the unusual one, because I'm like the male example of 50% of the population as a parent. So what's it? So we have this still, if it's meant in a good way, it's super stereotyping. Yeah. So, and maybe as a male who tries his best to have time with his kids, it's then not that. Do I feel really that it's normal in this organization as being as a dad taking his time, or is it just meant for females? Yeah, so
it's interesting.
And I don't know if this is an English saying, but the 𝗹𝗲𝗿𝗀𝗃 steckt im Detail. The devil is in the details.
Yes, yes, we say that. Yes.
Okay, you can. So it's really sometimes because then it's like the same example of the management board where all these white male mid-agers are, or best agers, and then it's the flexible part where all these women having kids and smiling, happy face, laptop and kitchen table, which is not the reality if you have kids. It's a huge nightmare and a mess, and everything was messed up. But if it's possible, it's a really nice way of putting it. So I think,
again,
talking about diversity,
and
it's not just race or where your culture or background. It's
all of it, every aspect.
Can I add something? Because we have put boundaries in this home office thing, that meetings are only between 9 and 12. Then it's 1 hour break. Nobody has to put there something in the calendar. It's in. And then from 1 to 5. And out of these times there are no meetings, and this has changed a lot because it's an IKEA Austrian decision. And when we are talking to other parts of IKEA, they are sending us invitations for lunchtime, and we don't accept it right now because we are used to that. It only brought one issue when we went back to the office and then want to go to the canteen. We all go at 12. And then
keep it simple.
I explained it to the colleagues in the canteen why it's
happening.
Why people from the head office are so strange.
There you go. Okay, fair enough. Well, we have about 5 minutes, and I do want to just address some things that were actually sent ahead of time when our attendees, participants had listed out a few things. Actually, Anette, coming back to you, one of the things that someone wanted to know about was how do big companies like IKEA see the topic of employer branding? And if they can only rely on their strong brand or their products that they have, are they really active beyond that topic? Are they really able to engage beyond resting, if you will, on their brand to obviously increase their talent pool and awareness?
There is a tendency to rest on this because it had worked for so many time, for a long time. I think it has changed now because of that what Thomas described, that the war of talent. But still, it's a struggle, because I think that employer branding really should be in HR. I believe in that. We call it people and culture, but but you have to collaborate with marketing and with communication. You have to deal with huge teams there with lots of experience. Yeah, and commercially, it's still the more important thing, but I think we have, the employer brand is, as I can see it, only positive. We had no problems with that someone is expecting there's something wrong, so it adds value to the brand.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm asking me because they don't give you they don't give us the place or the money or the recognition. But then it's like, yeah, I need a new colleague. Yes, I know. So what I've started.
We're aware.
So it was like, can we use the store as a recruitment channel or employer branding channel, because it's there, it's huge,
Sure.
it's nice.
It's well known.
In the first round it was no, you have to, and then we just do it.
And you
started
yeah.
to do it. And
I guess there's probably advantages and disadvantages to. We're using the term resting on your brand, obviously, and for places like IKEA or possibly even LinkedIn, or earlier you were saying Coca-Cola as an example, right? Just this is a huge brand. They're known everywhere throughout the world, but they're still constantly reinventing themselves and doing something in advertising or marketing.
But let's do an example. Do you know Coca-Cola?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Have you ever consumed Coca-Cola?
Yes, once or twice.
How's it to work for Coca-Cola and controlling in Vienna, I guess, the area?
They're doing fine.
You have no clue.
Oh.
Me neither.
I don't know.
So because it's two different buckets. So yes, there's brand in employer branding, and yes, sure, it is an advantage if it's already known. But how is it to work there? It's simply different from driving it or consuming it or having it on your PC because it's software.
Yeah.
Two different worlds.
Yeah.
So there's an advantage to it. Yes, you can use parts of it. You can use parts of the image. But there's a certain point where you have to answer questions. And I guess my experience that the answer you will provide is different if you're talking someone who's maybe a lawyer or someone who's more into finance or someone like me who's into sales. Because what I'm interested in is different. And even the team culture might be different a bit if these are a group of lawyers, a group of salespeople, we're allowed, controllers, smart and detail-oriented,
right.
The cliches. So I guess there's this overall brand, yes, there's this overall employer brand, true too, but be specific. And you can do that by bringing the people to the front. And I think if you do that, you will get more diverse in bringing out your message.
More. Yeah. Well, we have just a couple of minutes left, so why don't we take a few questions if we can. Anyone in the room here have a few? And I'll get a few from online as well. If you do have a question in the room, just raise your hand. Please do. Wait, Marina's going to bring a microphone so our online audience can hear you this time.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Alex from Bike Map. So I have a question regarding unconscious biases, because we're always talking about diversity inclusion. How do you personally deal with this topic? How do you try to reflect on your own unconscious biases? Because I try to do this constantly, but I'd like to hear what is maybe your silver bullet, how you're doing it, because maybe I can learn some new techniques for that.
Good question.
A really good question. For yourself or for the company, or both?
I think for both, actually.
Yeah, okay. Well, I can speak personally. When I worked at Molly, I had a really diverse team from all different parts of the world, all different backgrounds, ages, everything else. And we used to get into this habit where we'd say something and I'd go, okay, feedback time is what I'm talking about complete crap? Am I just coming at it from a very British perspective, which is highly likely given I lived there for most of my life, educate me, what am I missing? And that's such an amazing superpower of having a diverse team. And I was very lucky because we did have a diverse team, right? I think that's one of the amazing benefits of living in Europe, is that you can have this freedom of travel, so you do get natural diversity. In terms of the business, we did, again, I don't think there's ever a silver bullet. I think it is definitely a journey. There was never one thing. We had a couple of light bulb moments, but we were sort of baseline. So we got them to do the implicit bias association tests before a session, and we'd do sort of a 2-hour session. And it would be difficult because people would inherently have biases pop up in these reports, and you could tell they were like, I don't want to talk about it. And so the TA team that were delivering it would say, okay, so we did it, this is what came up for me. And that was really shocking for me. And I went away and thought about it, and I read stuff, and I talked to people, and it's something you learn about yourself. It's a journey, right? Everybody has it. I think that's the most important thing, is to take the fear out of it, to say everybody has unconscious bias. It's about checking yourself and having safety measures and safety nets with which to help you to do that. And I sort of feel that either by yourself, either at home or with your colleagues, having a safe environment to be open and talk about it is the best way to do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I hate to say, but we are running out of time, so I am going to call us to a close. Yes, Mathias, did you have something you wanted to?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to your question, Alex, in terms of biases when it comes to recruiting. We are collaborating with an unbiased hiring software. They're actually from the Netherlands,
Okay. Awesome.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. We just want to say thank you to our online community. This portion for our online community is drawing to a close. So if you would like to get more information, please head out to our website, employer.femailefactor.global. You can find a lot more information out there about employer branding tips and practical steps that you can take. We have white papers out there as well. The link should be below in the description of our event tonight. For our in-person audience, we are so grateful. Thank you all for coming tonight. Our portion continues a little bit longer in some networking. You'll have a chance to ask all of the panelists a few more questions. Just want to give a couple of quick shout outs. Thank you so much to our fabulous team for putting together the event this evening, for Spaces for hosting us. Thank you so much for having us here. Beautiful location. And of course, last but certainly not least, thank you to all of our wonderful panelists who were joining us this evening for their insights and all of their wisdom shared. We're so grateful. Thank you so much, especially for those of you who traveled distances. And we look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.